D&D players, what have been some of your favorite moments in a campaign, Part 2? I was rolling horribly. We used the 4d6 drop, the lowest method for stat generation, and I didn't have a single stat over 13. Since I couldn't really do much spectacular, I made a plate armor and shield super tanky fighter. On our very first adventure, we needed to climb down into a hole to investigate a ruined temple. Our rogue secured the knotted rope. That thing was solid. A knotted rope with a wall to brace against was a DC 5 climb check. Thanks to his low strength and encumbrance penalties, my fighter couldn't even take 10 on the check, so I had to roll to climb down. I rolled a 1. Our house rules didn't have it so 1s were automatic critical failures, and I didn't fail the check by enough to lose my grip, just not make any progress. I rolled again, another 1, and I rolled again with another 1. At this point, my guy was barely hanging on to the rope while the rest of the party was trying to haul him back up to safety. I rolled another 1. I looked at the DM and just asked what the falling damage was. Oh sure, now I start rolling 6s. And thus the party made it back to the town minus 1 fighter and refused to take anyone wearing full plate seriously ever again. My replacement character was a psychic warrior, fared much better. It's a simple thing, but one of my favorites. Background. My party was investigating the shady wandering preacher. He had converted a villager's young brother. That villager asked the party to look into it. So they sort of put it on their to-do list, since he seemed on the up and up at first, and they had more pressing concerns at the time. But they run into the priest and his converts in another town, and one party rogue decides to take a quick look around the preacher's inn room while he's out proselyting. He finds very old seal of prestigious knight's order among the preacher's possessions, and assuming it's a clue about some misdeed, he pockets it. The preacher inevitably finds the seal missing and is pissed, but has zero reason to suspect the party. He did have reason to suspect the village woman who has taken to following him from town to town trying to get people to steal one of his converts away. The moment. So the party finished their more important quest, and it leaves them near where the preacher is next expected to show up based on his established travel pattern. They find out where he's camped, and he's just choking the shit out of the village woman who had hired them. He's screaming at her that she knows who stole his seal. She's been following him around, harassing him, spreading lies about him, and he's fucking done putting up with her. The rogue pops out of stealth and confesses that he stole the seal and that he's sorry and that there's no reason to hurt the village woman. The preacher looks at the rogue, clenches his fist so hard it breaks the village woman's neck with an audible snap. And the player playing the warrior of the party just blurts out, "No!" To generate the kind of real reaction to a story element in a game was so gratifying as a GM. I'm usually the DM in all the campaigns I've been a part of. Be careful who you name. The players snuck behind fortress walls and went up to the guardhouse, containing the gate controls. An army was waiting outside to be let in. One of the players knocks and says, "We're losing the battle on the walls," and commander name says to pull back. He passes the bluff check and the guard goes, "You heard him, Fernando, we're pulling back." Fernando and the guard get up to leave. The players go, this guy has a name. He has to be important. He has to have loot. And so began a derailed evening of stalking this random dude to kill him and take his stuff. Give your players infinite money just to see what happens. At the end of a campaign, they passed a lot of creative tests and trials and ended up with a mansion and a fortune. We lost a player due to time concerns, so we explained in-game as the druid becoming permanent caretaker of the manor after being stupefied in a gold bar fight. The players used the money to commission a sick war wagon powered by the infinite hamster dimension, a plane filled with hamsters on wheels generating enough power to get about 10 miles an hour out of a reinforced wagon loaded with weapons. I already knew what one of the campaign obstacles were before the wagon was drawn up. A storm of feral dogs infested the streets of a small village, and people were going insane from the constant din of barking. They also lived entirely on the roofs of buildings because the buildings were occupied by constant dogs. The dogs were brought to the town due to demonic goings-on, and I planned on the players figuring out the source of the demonic influence, destroying it, and then the dogs would disperse and go away. All of this would take place without them being able to talk to each other over the noise. Instead, they unhinged the infinite hamster engine, all the dogs feasted until they slept, and then they proceeded as normal. Our friend, the Tank, started off with a bone as a weapon. He wanted to make it larger, so he would consistently ask the DM to insert it into enemies, and would have to roll a d20. He rolled a 20 3 separate times and ended up with a bone shoved into a goblin, shoved into a troll, shoved into some dungeon boss. This happened in my most recent campaign. Our druid has a baleful polymorph spell that can turn one enemy into a frog permanently if they fail a save. He's used it on every big bad evil guy, and every time the DM rolled a critical failure, rendering the entire plot and build up to nothing more than squishing a useless amphibian. That, for some reason, every time I try to tie some prisoner of ours, I roll a 20 in this current campaign. That led to the development of my character into an S&M dwarf. I was the DM, my significant other was a half-orc barbarian. They were in greenness during the dragon attack. One of the other players cast a jumping spell on him. He jumped from the tower onto the dragon's back with a nat 20 and attacked its wings with his hand axes until it had landed and agreed to leave. He later got a pet black dragon who lived near the river and guarded the town in exchange for gold and free meals. I played in one where the rules allowed the players to have a special item. One player chose to have an unbreakable glass bottle. We didn't really think much of it at the time. Much later, we were in the last dungeon with an uber hard monster, some kind of super troll or something. A player cast a spell to reduce person, and it was successful. The DM was just like, okay, it is shrunk for the moment, but it will return to its full size in a few minutes, and just then, while the DM was still talking, a player said, I pick up the troll and put it in the bottle, put the cap on, and we all leave the room. The DM looked so sad. His plan to confront us with his uber bad monster had totally failed. The glass surface and cap prevented the monster from escaping the bottle. When the time of the spell wore off, the monster grew, but the bottle didn't. All that was left was goo everywhere. And of course, the bottle itself was still intact. It was truly epic. I'd been keen to play D&D for years, so I recruited a few theater friends with the promise of it being like fantasy improv comedy. So that was the attitude we went into all our campaigns with. If we had a slogan, it would have been, Dungeon Masters hate them! For our first campaign, we played an introductory adventure called The Sunken Citadel. There were a lot of rats to kill. I was playing a really poorly rolled, lawful good dwarf paladin who ended up being the most luckless, bumbling, accident-prone character ever, a constant source of hilarity for the group because he inevitably fucked up everything he touched. A lot of the comedy came from conflict with my mate, who was playing a neutral evil wizard of some kind, called the Amazing Mikhail. He was particularly innovative and took every opportunity to create chaos, mainly by eating everything he could. It went like this. You enter the cavern. To your right, there is a sheer wall studded with glowing mushrooms. Oh, I eat the mushrooms. The DM had him trip balls for the next little while, which led him to thinking we were all enemies, which led to a fight in which we all nearly died. We eventually got him restrained and asleep, which fixed the hallucinations. Sometime later on, in a new room, you see some barrels labeled Goblin Liquor. The recently awoken Amazing Mikhail replies with a beautiful response. Oh, I smash a barrel and drink the goblin liquor. Okay, you lose 5 HP, and you now have explosive acidic diarrhea. Oh, kinda like me. Now, every time you're attempting a combat action, you have to do a concentration check. If you fail, you shit yourself. Yes! Oh shit, you gave him ulcerative colitis, you son of a bitch, I have that. Of course, in our next combat, Mikhail failed all of his concentration checks, and we started getting mauled. I got desperate and got my dwarf paladin to try to heal the wizard, even though we hated each other.
Okay, I use lay on hands to heal Mikhail's diarrhea.
Where do you use lay on hands? Oh no.
Oh, Jesus, fuck, oh, Mikhail's ass.
Mikhail, roll a concentration check. He failed. Your hands are covered in acidic diarrhea. It went on like this for quite some time, and by the end, I was down to a couple of HP. My armor and gear had been destroyed by the acid, and Mikhail was fully healed and on top of the world after rolling a natural 20 and basically nuking whatever monster we'd been fighting from orbit. We trudged into the next area and ended up in a hallway.
You are in a narrow hallway. Each wall is stocked with casks. Some contain oil and others are full of elf cake.
Wait, are elf cakes cakes for elves or cakes made from elves?
The former?
Excellent. I eat. Oh no, you fucking don't! I'd use my torch to set fire to the barrels.
The oil-filled barrels explode. The explosion blew us all into a nearby room, knocking out one of the party and nearly killing the rest of us except for our ranger who managed to dodge it. The sound of the explosion attracted every monster in a 500-meter radius, and we had a tough fight of all of it until we were nearly all knocked out and Mikhail saved us again by some ridiculous fluke. My mate kept playing the same character for a few campaigns to much hilarity until we acquired a new DM who wasn't as flexible and who got sick of Mikhail's habit of using secure shelter to conjure a 20-square-foot sturdy cottage or lodge made of a material that is common in the area, 300 feet in the air above enemies who it would drop on, usually for an instant kill. Good times. We were playing a 5th edition module which had us hunting down a foreign princess who betrayed a king and murdered him. In the process of discovering who had done it, we came across her little familiar demon, who we knocked out and kept in a bag. When we finally caught up with her and her crew, she was livid that we captured her familiar. A sorcerer in our group proceeded to get her attention, pull the familiar from the bag, cut its throat, then trace the sign of his god on his forehead in its blood. Not D&D, but Deathwatch, a Warhammer 40k RPG where you play as Space Marines. I, a brother of the Dark Angels, and an especially irritating Ultramarine, were evacuating civilians from a potentially Tyranid gene-stealer-infested city with the help of the Planetary Defense Forces, who were piloting the transport craft. Ferrying civilians seems like a waste of time for a team of 4 battle brothers including a fucking librarian, but the Ultramarine was, of course, in charge, and he insisted on it. What good is protecting a few craftsmen and administrators when a xeno-horde looms? Fortunately, we planned to immediately return to the evacuated city to cleanse the Tyranid menace. The civilians screamed as several turned on their comrades, bearing with them with blunt objects, slashing with hidden knives, and even clawing with their hands. The gene stealer cults were apparently more widespread than we thought. Nearly a quarter of the passengers seemed to be under the influence of aliens, and they ran to the cockpit, we could only assume in order to try to kill us. The Ultramarine leapt to block their path and slay the cultists with his chainsword, beckoning me to follow and save his precious passengers. But it was plain to see that they were too numerous and the craft was too large for both of us, let alone one, to prevent enough from overpowering the small crew. There was no chance to save the passengers, only one option to save the 2 of us in order to complete our mission. Without even raising the barrel, I fired my flamethrower, turning the passenger deck into a kiln for a mere few seconds, plenty of time to send the faithful to the side of the Emperor, but keep ourselves free from harm. Unmodified humans can be replaced easily. Battle Brothers, high-capacity surface-to-space craft, and power armor take many years to replace if they can be at all. The Ultramarine did not see it that way, and, aghast, took 1d4 insanity points. I got some renown points that I spent on a sweet bayonet. If you'd like to ever drop a story for us to read, or just share in general, please do so in the comments, but just make sure it's relevant to the topic of the video today. On our subreddit, however, which you can find in the description below, you can write up any story you dream of, share your own threads, or have others share a passion that you have by starting your very own thread too. Or you can just, shoot the shit with the community, of course, and the 3-sided die that happens to be me, Dave, and Ripper. If you liked the vid, then also leave us a like, and if you're new here, let me tell you something. take your finger and apply pressure to the left mouse button while hovering over our subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all the new videos we're posting. Now, with all that out of the way, I just wanted to say thank you for showing up and thank you for letting us entertain you. Seriously, it's an honor. Trust me, it really is to me. And every night I go to bed thinking somebody out there is actually smiling because of what I say and what I do. And that's all I've ever really wanted in life, and hopefully, as a voice actor, I can grow bigger and bigger and bigger and reach even more people so I can bring happiness all over the world one day. It's a dream, and I'm going to work my ass off to get it done. So, I hope you have a great day, a fantastic night, and I want you to remember one little thing. After every storm, you will eventually see the sunshine again. So stay safe, be happy, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.